good football team coming in. These guys are playing really well, and have done some really great things early on in this season, and it's going to be a heck of a challenge.
Welcome back to a bounce-back edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barreiro, joined as always by Justin Gaard and Lori Fisher, wearing not so much purple, but
we're told plum.
Is that like a statement of, if you want me to wear purple, Vikings, win the damn game? Or?
Yes, I told you, we do our best. It's very difficult to find great purple, like true Vikings purple clothing. So you'll see kind of an array of purple on Fox 9.
Nice to
know. A lot
of
shades.
I appreciate it.
We
shades
try.
of purple.
I asked, I guess. I shouldn't be surprised that you answered.
Well, the Vikings lost to the Eagles, as we know, 24-7 on Monday night. It was supposed to be a close game. At least a lot of people thought that, and that the Vikings would potentially win by a lot. But now they're getting ready for Game 3 this Sunday at noon at home against the Detroit Lions. The Lions are also 1-1, and they also lost to the Eagles. Dan?
Well, I mentioned Bounce Back Edition because the club certainly needs to bounce back. And here's what's fascinating to me as the week's gone on, Guardsy. It appears to me that people have become so conscious of maybe a little bit of a surge in the Detroit Lions' dysfunction. I think they're 4-4 in their last 8 games going back to last year. That I honestly think put it this way, if the Vikings find a way to drop to 1-2, it won't be, I don't think it can be about overconfidence, because there are people in this town who are seriously scared of the Detroit Lions. So I don't know if that says we're giving them more respect because they look better. It's because of their HBO show that they're on.
Hard
What's that
Knocks.
called? Hard Knocks?
Yep.
Or because we are still so devastated by just how poorly we played and coached in the Monday night game, our first chance to be exposed to a national television audience. Maybe it's all of the above.
I think it's all of the above. I'm not scared of Detroit, but I like their coach. He's crazy, Dan Campbell, and I think they won like 3 or 4 games last year. For whatever the reason, it felt like they won a lot more, because it felt like, as you mentioned, they finished strong, 4-4 in their last 8. I think the Vikings are going to handle what they need to handle this coming Sunday. But going back to Monday, what a difference a week makes. A week ago, we were on this show talking about how prepared the Vikings looked, how efficient the Vikings looked, how well run the Vikings looked against Green Bay. It was 180 degrees different from week 1 to week 2. They looked unprepared. They looked slow. They actually looked sped up. They looked slow on defense and sped up on offense, which is not a good combination. My guy Kirk Cousins had his worst game in a while.
Awful.
And so now you're kind of left, okay, who are the real Vikings? They're probably somewhere in the middle. Historically, getting Detroit would be a nice kind of layup to get yourself back on the right track. I still think they're going to win, but I'm not afraid of the Lions, but I certainly respect the Lions.
I mean, they're at home against an inferior team.
Well, and that's it.
They're supposed to win the
It should be a nice reset.
I'm hoping, though, what took place Monday night will mean that the folks who already were literally chiseling the KOC bust for Canton will at least slow down a little bit. He may end up being the best coach in Vikings history, behind Bud or right ahead of Bud. Who knows? Anything's possible. But let's be honest. If Mike Zimmer had coached that Monday night game, he'd be getting destroyed.
30 seconds.
In the first half, the defense looked utterly unprepared for a pretty conservative, a series of short passes over the middle. We were flummoxed by it like we'd never seen it before. And in the second half, the offense looked like it had never seen a blitz. And we all know what happens when Kirk Cousins is not prepared to deal with a blitz. So preparation was every bit as bad as execution. So again, I'm not saying calling for his head, but let's slow down a little bit.
Enough said.
And see how this thing goes before we say, KOC, he can do no wrong. I can't wait for him to get slimed every week.
I'm interested, by the way, there's been a lot of Dalvin Cook discussion this week.
Yes.
We got to get him going. Has he looked the same to you? Like, even in his carries, something just doesn't seem right there. It's something to watch.
How do we know?
Well,
he's had the ball so little.
Well, I'm hoping that's it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's it, because at other times, the carries, it just didn't look that explosive.
We got to squeeze this in, Lori Fisher.
Okay,
You're wearing
really
plum.
quick.
We've got
I'm going to steal it from another
For the
block.
plum.
It's a Paul Charchian tweet, and it's a good nugget. 19 plays in the red zone so far for the Vikings. Dalvin Cook has touched the ball once. That's absurd.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
If they know something that you're suggesting, then we'll see. Maybe we'll find that out. But we got to at least give him the ball enough to find out what he's got left.
Okay, enough said. You can catch that game right here on Fox 9 at.
Oh, is that true? It's on Fox 9?
It is.
And Vikings Game Day Live right before it.
At 9:30 a.m.
Wow, even better.
Special
So much
edition.
more.
So much more. The Twins start a series against the Angels tonight at home with so many recent losses. Minnesota's chances of making the playoffs they're over. I mean, they're not over, but they're over.
No, they're over.
They're over.
They're over.
Yeah, they're over,
It was
Lori.
like point
Yep, they're over.
something 1%. The Twins had looked like contenders once upon a time, at least at the beginning of the season, but it all fell apart. Justin?
They looked like contenders in May, basically. They were contenders for June, July, and parts of August because the division wasn't very good. We talked about this on the radio, Dan. I love the phrase for it. There's this new trend called quiet quitting for people that have done this in their office. They're not quitting their job, but they're not going, 8:30. They're not going 8 to 8,
Yes.
60-hour work weeks, doing all these
extra
things.
mile.
They're just doing their job quietly, and then they're kind of moving on with the rest of their life. I have done that with the Twins. There was a great tweet, you brought it up the other night, from somebody, and I'd love to give proper attribution, saying people must have given up on the Twins because I'm not seeing enough Twitter activity on what a debacle that play at first base was. And I replied and said, yes. They have given us this time back. We talked about it in August with the NFL and preseason. There's no reason to pay attention. There's no reason to continue to follow it. There are other things now going on. Kids are back in school. The only reason to pay attention to it now is where do they go from here, and is there a reasonable path out of here? They continue to have guys on the injured list, which doesn't excuse everything, but it's a part of it. But I'd also ask, why is everybody getting injured? Why do they have so many injuries, including in the pitching staff, whether it's guys they have, guys they acquired in the offseason, or guys that they traded for
That they've all handled with kid gloves.
at the trade deadline?
It hasn't mattered.
Something is not adding up there. So they have now they have, whereas 2 months ago, we didn't think they had these significant questions to answer.
30 seconds.
It's been exposed that they do have a lot of questions to answer, and I'm not sure they have the answers for them.
If you call what you're doing quiet quitting, what do we call what the Twins have done? That's loud quitting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they
Quitting
2
in
weeks
public.
ago tonight, they started a home series with Cleveland, a game and a half out.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they start the games tonight, 10 games out.
Terrible.
They could be mathematically eliminated as soon as tonight, or certainly will over the weekend. That's a crater. That's a collapse that goes beyond injuries, but also speaks to making the wrong choices in terms of the pitching staff, and really not even giving themselves a chance to do something special at the end.
Enough said. Gophers wide receiver Chris Ottman-Bell is out for the rest of the season after getting hurt on Saturday. You were there, Justin. Coach Fleck says they will apply for a 7th year of eligibility. What does the team do now without him? The Gophers play on Michigan State on Saturday.
Will you be there, Justin?
I will be there. Yes. Gopher Game Day Live, Gopher pregame show, 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. So be up early to watch that. To answer Lori's first question, that's what we're all trying to figure out. They do have guys that have been around. They have guys that have made plays. They have guys that have been in the program for a long time that were going to be a part of this season, whether Chris Ottman-Bell got hurt or not. But it's foolish to think. I'd feel a lot better, I'll put it this way, and a very important game that could set them up very nicely in the Big Ten West as a crossover that's not Michigan, that's not Ohio State. It is a road game where they haven't won since 2006. I'd feel a lot better if Chris Ottman-Bell was in the lineup. He's their best red zone threat. He's their best third down threat. He's their best receiver. There's a reason why they were so excited he came back for year 6. So I think they can weather that storm. It's still going to go through Mo Ibrahim, but it's foolish to think that it won't have some type of impact.
Like I said, for me, the Gophers have me stuck because they've dominated all 3 opponents. That's a good thing. They didn't mess with any of them. They didn't flirt with danger in any of the games. But the reality is the 3 teams they beat are combined 0-10. They've been outscored 396 to 107. And that's not their fault. But that's still my hesitation in saying, by God, they're going to Michigan State and they're going to dominate or they're going to win. I think they can. I felt that the division itself is wide open and very vulnerable. But I need to see them play against a legitimate opponent. Michigan State was playing on the road against a at least semi-legitimate opponent.
Right.
And that's where these comparisons get very funky and very complicated, and why I'm looking forward to this game.
I was speechless. Unbelievable that this ruling would come down. Did not really know what to say. Obviously, we had to honor it, but it was at that point in time I said, we have got to continue to push the federal government and the FBI to do the investigation.
Welcome back to Enough Said. Governor Walz calls for an investigation into why a Ramsey County judge ordered state education officials to restart payments to the nonprofit Feeding Our Future. Nearly 50 people have been indicted in the massive fraud case. U.S. Attorney Andy Lugar says Feeding Our Future took more than $250 million in federal funding to feed kids, and that very few meals were served. Concerns were raised early on by the Department of Education employees, even to the point where the department got sued by the organization that is now in trouble with the FBI, if you can follow that. Dan.
It is complicated, and it's a hard story to sort of really comprehend at this point. Over the years, I have tended, especially on the radio, to mock one of my former states, Illinois, because it seemed like almost every year they'd have some major corruption scandal involving the government, involving the governors. I think for a while they had like 3 or 4
usually the
governors,
right?
In the Hoosgow, in prison. And I got to tell you, we can't mock them anymore here in Minnesota because we always say, well, we would never do anything like that. We're too above board. We're too civilized. This is massive and national in terms of the reaction it's getting when you're talking about $250 million. And these are all allegations, and it is complicated. But it's a reminder that from this point forward, we can't lecture anybody. We can't even lecture number 4, Brett Favre, for stealing from the poor potentially. Yeah. Because that's what happened here. Money was taken away from people who were in need, it appears, on several levels on an absolutely massive scale. And it appears there's going to be more arrests coming, more charges coming forth here. And obviously the lack of follow-up on this thing is absolutely huge. Quickly, I would say about the governor, the governor's saying, hey, we had to do what the judge said, and that's one of the issues. Why would the judge say, insist? It's a fair question, but my understanding is the Department of Education didn't file an appeal of that ruling, which is, I believe, they could have done as well. And so if there was this much stunned reaction, why would you not go through whatever legal channels that were made available to you to continue to at least press the case and say, we're not satisfied with this?
Their response to that, I think, was we didn't want to drag it out longer. It was going to be more expensive. We didn't want the bad guys to maybe even know we were continuing to do this thing. We wanted to do our work behind the scenes, whether that's thin or not, because that was the number one question I had. Because it does look like they found it fairly quickly. I think it started, March or April of 2020. Right. By October of 2020, they were already looking around and going, okay, these sites aren't doing food. These are ridiculous numbers. These names haven't even been made up. But their story is we were going to let the feds investigate it after the front end, because that judgment had to do with discrimination, right? It's amazing how these people pushed some of the right buttons to get them off the track, but also gave them absolute layups in other instances, whether it was the restaurants or the places. I think it was a second floor apartment was one of the sites that allegedly was delivering some meals. The fakenames.com, I'm butchering the website, but that's where they were finding the roll call for how they were doing these meals.
How about the fact that that some of the names they were making up, they were going to these name websites.
Well, that's it, yeah.
To come up with names so that they could actually continue to get away with this incredible level of fraud, potentially.
Enough said. If you want...
real quick, though. Well, actually, we can do it. We're going to talk about the debates now, so I can dovetail that in. I don't want to get on your bad side, Lori.
Well, if you want to learn more about the story, we have all of our stories posted on fox9.com.
Perfect.
To catch up. The midterm election is coming up in less than 7 weeks. It's on November 8th. It includes the governor's race here in Minnesota. There will be 2 more debates between Tim Walz and Scott Jensen, hosted by several outstate TV stations and one by NPR. They did debate at Farm Fest in early August, so that'll make it 3. Theo Keefe did a fact check. There were 6 debates in the 2018 race, and get this, 26 debates in the 2010 race between Mark Dayton and Tom Emmer.
Man, I
Dan,
forgot about that.
That does seem a lot like a lot.
That almost seems like, why you even bother at some point. 3 is ridiculous. We know the game. We know how politics works. The incumbent, it's like the heavyweight boxer, right? I'm the heavyweight champion, so you got to come and get me, and I'm not going to make it easy for you. But three debates, because I know there's a lot of discussion early about, they're negotiating and they'll end up with more. 3 is embarrassing. And, I don't understand. I guess I'm surprised that the governor does not understand, especially when one of them happened so long ago. Right. Because even the idea of, we can't do it at State Fair, it's too early, it's a limited crowd, which makes no sense. It's a huge crowd. So none of this makes the governor look very good. I wanted to follow up. because can you blame the governor for the story we just talked about? That's probably a little too easy. But
Right.
there are oversight issues, and it's come up in another case, an audit of DHS Human Services regarding financial reviews, and 85% of grants, I think were at least $50,000 or more. They weren't even doing the checking they're supposed to do. And this is what makes people skeptical about government, quite frankly, is prodigious oversight issues. And so I think it would be a fair question to ask the governor, well, how much are you on this? How much are people that you have working for you, how much do you stay aggressive? Because we all agree these programs are important, right? But if the money's not getting to the right place, or nobody's even bothering to check where it's going, that's a significant problem. And so not going to be as much of a chance for the challenger to get into any of this, because I think this does make the governor look weak. I almost afraid.
Well, that's it. And I don't know why, because I think he does a pretty good job explaining himself. Whether you buy the answer or not, whether it's the COVID stuff or the press conference he did this week, I feel like he does an okay job of saying, this is what I was thinking, this is why. Certainly on the COVID stuff, I thought, especially early, even if you don't agree with some of the stuff he did, he at least explained his reasoning for it. I'm surprised he's trying to run out the clock as well.
30 seconds.
Because, and if you just want to look at it straight politically, Brian McClung, who used to work with Teapot, said this back fair time, you're giving the opposition something that shouldn't really be a talking point, another talking point. You're allowing them to say, what's the governor afraid of? Compare him to Joe Biden, right? There's been political cartoons about Walz and Biden in Biden's basement, from when we talked about that back in 2020. So that's what, for me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because if you think some of this stuff has been defensible and you have reasons for it, just go out there and explain it away, and it shouldn't be that difficult.
It follows a pattern, and you even get this from people who cover the legislature, or cover St. Paul, cover government. They say even among some Dems, there's frustration that they think the governor goes too silent. He's gone too inside in terms of who he is even who's in his inner circle.
Right.
And none of that, as you say, all that does is it grants an opportunity to an opposition. The question that's been raised, does the opposition have the discipline to take advantage of it? The answer,
maybe that's why he sits on the sidelines.
No.
That's probably the calculation they've made.
But it ain't a good look, man. It looks like you are running from some stuff.
I want to get to one more thing that's been developing in the last 24 hours. The Boston Celtics suspended their coach for the season. Ime Udoka is accused of having a consensual, intimate relationship with a woman on the franchise's staff, and that is against the organization's rules. He apologized to players, fans, the organization, and his family for letting them down. Justin?
On the year anniversary that the same thing happened for Gerson Rosas, I don't mean to laugh, but it sounds like they knew about this, the organization did, going back to July. Because a lot of people have said, and frankly, I was one of them, that a year seems a little, I guess, strict for a consensual relationship. He's not technically married, but he's been with someone for a long time. I don't know her situation. But what changed it for me, at least, and I don't know what their policies were, if there was a big power differential too, because that was the Rosas problem, clearly. What changed it was recently the woman said, well, there's some stuff also going on that I was not asking for, some unwarranted comments, some unwarranted actions, and that takes it to a different level where you almost wonder, can he come back from this at all? There's still a lot we don't know. As Lori mentioned, this broke, I think, late on Wednesday night, and we learned a little bit more on Thursday night as some of these things went down. But we're going to talk about Anthony Edwards in the lightning round. Some things popping up here right before the season for different franchises. It's scary to think of it this way, but I think it's unlikely. Even though all they've done to this point is they've suspended him for what they say a year. Most people think he's not going to get his job back. Right.
They're sort of putting this off. You could say, well, then why not just go ahead and dismiss him now? I don't know what the mitigating circumstance is there. But the scary part for some people is, well, why is this, this is if it's consensual,
right?
Why is this even getting out? It's getting out because the same media people who are demanding to know why it's out would otherwise, without any explanation, say, this is one of the coaches of the year. He got his team to the NBA Finals last year, and wasn't that his first year?
I think it was.
Whatever it was, he had a great year. What happened here? So there's no way, I think, to keep this quiet,
right? Because
too many people would be demanding an explanation,
right,
if there was no story being leaked. So inevitably, I think it had to come out, and I think he's probably done.
Welcome back to Enough Said. It's time for the lightning round. Timberwolves guard Anthony Edwards has been fined $40,000. He used anti-gay language on Instagram last week. He has apologized, saying that what he said was immature, hurtful, and disrespectful. He is in his third year of a 4-year contract. Dan?
I think. Well, this apparently fits the pattern. We're all a little cynical about whether $40,000 means anything to multi-millionaires. But this, I guess, fits the pattern of what's come before. I think the bigger challenge, the more important part of this, frankly, is going to be when he starts talking to the media jackals.
Right.
And how he handles himself and what he maybe attempts to get involved in to sort of make this about more than what it looks like now is, I screwed up bad. Where do I start? I start with the apology. I think people are waiting for a little bit more than that.
And they should get it on Monday. That's Timberwolves Media Day, and that's the story. That's 100% the story. It should be the story, not just for Ant, but I'm sure his teammates will be asked about it, Tim Connelly, as they should be, because what happens next is the most important part.
It's almost time for the Wild. The team has their first preseason game this Sunday against the Avalanche. The regular season kicks off on October 13th against the New York Rangers at home. Dan, we know you're a big hockey guy.
Well, he's the ambassador.
Well, I am a big hockey
ambassador,
guy,
according to Craig Leopold.
Look, in all seriousness, how often in our recent history can we say we're actually looking forward to both the pro hockey and pro basketball seasons for our local teams? That's the beauty of it.
I mean, and it happens so fast. Here we are.
Next up.
It's almost
we're lucky
October.
If there's one worth paying attention to. Now we at least have two where you say, well, let's see where this goes.
And now we can throw it in the rundown every week.
I did hang up my Wild t-shirts so that they're not wrinkly for the season.
That's good. Way to plan your work and work your plan.
Yep.
What an organizer.
We do have viewers in Wisconsin, so we can't forget our Packer fans,
yes, we
right?
do.
They're 1-1. They beat the Bears last weekend, and they celebrated after a touchdown. Can we play that video? There you go. They pretended, well, wait for it.
It's all right. We can build up to it.
They were pouring and drinking tea. I know Dan likes to talk about the
ayahuasca.
Yes.
It's a nice homage to number 12. Then they fall
Aaron
and pass
says
out.
it's not a drug, it's plant.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I thought, aren't some plants, don't they have drugs in them?
Oh, marijuana is a
Psychedelic.
plant, and that has been a drug for a while. Yeah.
Well, I don't understand what I know what he was trying to say. He doesn't want it demonized.
Yeah. The ayahuasca community.
No, because it's very important. He's pretty much said, I loved it, and I'll probably get back to it
It's
again.
a good celebration, by the way. I like the celebration.
Very unique.
It is creative,
and finally,
but it's playing to Roger's ego is the part I don't love.
Well, what's the difference?
There was another celebration, if you haven't heard. Last Saturday night, Dan was officially
Speaking of
inducted.
ego,
What happened?
And playing to
You were
them.
officially,
What happened?
Look at you there, all dapper Dan, inducted into the Hall of Fame.
You doubted me on the suit, Lori.
You did not get yanked off the stage for going too long, although I do believe you had the longest speech
No,
out
I
of the
didn't.
5 inductees. How does it feel to be a Hall of Famer?
I think we should make this a regular lightning round item at least for another month or two.
Yeah.
What do you think? Or do you think we move on? It was great. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would after giving the speech. I was nervous about that. But, you got to get on with your life. Everybody else has to do the speech too. But it was very well done. I got great support. Justin made an effort. Basically, he sped through parts of Dinkytown and
and
the west
you gave him a
side.
shout out, a very emotional shout out during your speech.
I did, actually. Lori, did you like your shout out? Lori?
I'm going to say enough said. We're out of time here.
My analytics,
like
by
I
the
said
way.
on Twitter, I've only been your TV producer for 16 years.
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
If you go back to when we first started working together.
When Enough Said gets into the Pavic
That's
as
it.
a show,
See, we're not. This wasn't. This
we got to
wasn't
win
a
an
TV
Emmy first.
honor.
I know.
I didn't
Got to
want
win
to
an
be.
Emmy first.
That's
My
okay.
analytics, by the way,
Thanks for
said
inviting me.
I'm glad you're not bitter.
The other 4 speeches combined were not as long as Dan's. What my
Enough said. We gotta
analytics
go.
said. I got that right from the Pavic.